इन दिस प्रोग्राम। बहुत बहुत स्वागत है सर आपका। तो सर शुरू करें सर, आपके आगे होते सर कार्यक्रम।
श्योर
जी सर, जी सर। आज हम वापस विश्वविद्यालय के मानव संसाधन विकास केंद्र द्वारा आयोजित एक और कार्यक्रम श्रृंखला ऑनलाइन लेक्चर सीरीज में आपका स्वागत करते हैं। सबसे पहले मैं आप सभी को, जितने भी हमारे साथ जुड़े हुए हैं, जो ऑडियंस है हमारी, उन सबको मैं अ वेरी हैप्पी न्यू ईयर, बहुत जो है शुभकामनाएं देता हूं कि उनका ये साल बहुत ही समृद्धि और खुशियां लेकर के आए उनके लिए। और एक बार फिर हम एक नए वेंचर के साथ में, नए इवेंट के साथ में आपके सामने प्रस्तुत हैं। इस बार हम जो है आईआईटी के साथ में, आईआईटी के कोलैबोरेशन में और जोधपुर सिटी नॉलेज एंड इनोवेशन क्लस्टर, इनके साथ, इनके सानिध्य में हम अपनी ये जो सीरीज, लेक्चर सीरीज है, ऑर्गेनाइज कर रहे हैं। आज आर्मी डे है, नेशनल आर्मी डे है। मैं हमारे जो हमको प्रोटेक्ट करते हैं सारे साल, हमारा जो पूरा जो देश की सुरक्षा है, हमारी इंटीग्रिटी है, उसको बनाए रखने में उनका बहुत बड़ा रोल रहता है। मैं उनको सैल्यूट करता हूं आज के दिन में। और आजादी का अमृत महोत्सव के अंतर्गत ये प्रोग्राम हम आयोजित कर रहे हैं आज। और ये आजादी जो है हमारी, इन्हीं की बदौलत है, हमारी सेना और आर्म्ड फोर्सेस की बदौलत। मैं इन सबको एक बार वापस सैल्यूट करता हूं। और इस आजादी का अमृत महोत्सव में हम लोग जो कुछ भी हमारा, जो किसी भी स्ट्रीम में जो हमारा लिगेसी है या जो हमारी अचीवमेंट्स हैं जो है, उनको हम सेलिब्रेट करने का प्रयास करते हैं। और उसी क्रम में माननीय कुलपति महोदय के निर्देशन में, मार्गदर्शन में, हम लोग इस बार जो उनके द्वारा एक स्थापित एक विजनरी एक एस्टेब्लिशमेंट है, सेंटर फॉर ह्यूमन रिसोर्स डेवलपमेंट, इसके माध्यम से हम हमारे फैकल्टी, हमारे स्टूडेंट्स और हमारे जो एम्प्लॉइज हैं अक्रॉस इन द यूनिवर्सिटी, अक्रॉस द नेशन, हम कोशिश करते हैं कि सेमिनार्स, वर्कशॉप्स और लेक्चर्स और डिफरेंट टाइप एक्टिविटीज के माध्यम से हम इनके रिसोर्स को हम डेवलपमेंट करने का प्रयास करते रहें। और उसी के तहत हम कभी लास्ट टाइम हमने एमसीक्यू बेस्ड कुछ क्वेश्चन कंपटीशंस ऑर्गेनाइज किए थे और कुछ फार्माकोविजिलेंस के ऊपर हमने प्रोग्राम ऑर्गेनाइज किया था। और इसी सीरीज में इस बार हम जो है टेक्नोलॉजी बेस्ड एविडेंसेस फॉर आयुर्वेदा सॉल्यूशन इन प्रिसिजन हेल्थ, इस पर हम एक लेक्चर सीरीज लेकर के आए हैं, जिसमें जो हमारे आयुर्वेद के जो सिद्धांत हैं, आयुर्वेद के जो सिद्धांत, जो हमारा एक आयुर्वेद के जो एक पुरानी लिगेसी है, जिसमें हम कई सारे एक्सेप्ट्स हमको देखने को मिलते हैं। जैसे हमारे भगवान श्री गणेश जी को जो है, सर को जो है एलिफेंट के हाथी के सर से रिप्लेस कर दिया गया था। तो ये सब चीजें, या विश्वला की कटी हुई टांग की जगह लोहे की टांग लगा दी गई थी, या जीवक का ऑपरेशन, कैटरैक्ट का ऑपरेशन आचार्य सुश्रुत के द्वारा किया गया था। तो ये सारे एक्सेप्ट जो हम पढ़ते हैं ऐसे कई, या रक्त बीज का एग्जांपल देखते हैं, दुर्गा सप्तशती में आता है कि रक्त बीज का वध कर देते थे, उसके रक्त से कई सारे वापस उतने राक्षस उत्पन्न हो जाते। तो ये सब चीजें, इनको हम कैसे प्रूव कर पाए, या आज जो संजय जी ने जो धृतराष्ट्र को महाभारत दिखाई थी, तो ये जितनी भी चीजें हमारे टेक्सचुअल रेफरेंसेस, ऐसे कई रेफरेंसेस हमारे वेदों, पुराण, उपनिषदों में मिलते हैं। या नारद जी वहां प्रकट हो जाते थे दूसरी जगह में, और आज हम देख रहे हैं कि हम सब दूसरी जगह पे एक साथ ऐसे जुड़े हुए हैं। तो क्या इससे हम कोरिलेट कर सकते हैं? तो ये सब टेक्नोलॉजी, ये सारे जितनी भी चीजें हैं आज की डेट में, हम हमारे जितने भी रेफरेंसेस हैं, इनको हम कहीं ना कहीं समझ पाने में टेक्नोलॉजी के माध्यम से संभव हो पा रहा है। तो इसी कॉन्टेक्स्ट में हम लोग इस सीरीज को ऑर्गेनाइज कर रहे हैं कि जो हमारे जो आयुर्वेद है उसको हम कैसे एक्सप्लोर कर सकते हैं, कि हम हमारा जो कुछ भी लिटरेचर है, या हमारे जो कंसेप्ट्स हैं, वो सारे के सारे अप्लाइड हैं और टेक्नोलॉजी बेस्ड हैं। इस रेफरेंस में हम कई सारे इश्यूज को जो है इसमें डिस्कस करेंगे। और इसी कंसेप्ट में जो है आज हमारा पहला लेक्चर प्रोफेसर मिताली मुखर्जी जी के माध्यम से होगा, आयुटेक फॉर प्रिसिजन मेडिसिन इंट्रोडक्शन टू द बेसिक फ्रेमवर्क। इस रूप में पहला लेक्चर हम आज करेंगे। तो आज इस कार्यक्रम में हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं हमारे माननीय कुलपति महोदय डॉक्टर सर्वपल्ली राधाकृष्णन राजस्थान आयुर्वेद विश्वविद्यालय, प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर अभिमन्यु कुमार जी हमारे बीच में मौजूद हैं, और भारतीय प्रौद्योगिकी संस्थान IIT जोधपुर के माननीय निदेशक प्रोफेसर शांतनु चौधरी जी हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं। मैं आपका इस कार्यक्रम में हृदय से बहुत बहुत आभार व्यक्त करता हूं कि आपने, धन्यवाद, स्वागत करता हूं, आभार व्यक्त करता हूं कि आपने इस कार्यक्रम में उपस्थित होने के लिए हमें अपने व्यस्त समय में से समय निकाला है, हमें ब्लेसिंग देने के लिए समय निकाला है। मैं सबसे पहले हमारे बीच में मौजूद हैं प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर अभिमन्यु कुमार जी, उनका छोटा सा परिचय आप सबको देना चाहूंगा। आप MD हैं IMS BHU से और प्रोफेसर एंड हेड हैं NIA जयपुर में। एक्स हमारा जो नेशनल लेवल का इंस्टीट्यूट है, फर्स्ट नेशनल लेवल का एक इंस्टीट्यूट था, ऑल इंडिया इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ आयुर्वेद साइंसेस, उसमें डायरेक्टर रहे हैं आप सेंट्रल काउंसिल ऑफ रिसर्च इन आयुर्वेद सिद्धा में डायरेक्टर जनरल रहे हैं, आप उत्तराखंड आयुर्वेद यूनिवर्सिटी के वाइस चांसलर रहे हैं, और प्रेजेंटली आप हमारे आयुर्वेद विश्वविद्यालय जोधपुर में वाइस चांसलर के पद पर को सुशोभित कर रहे हैं। आपका जो विजन है, पूरा देश उससे समय से लाभान्वित होता रहा है। पूरे कई सारी मानद समितियों में आप सलाहकार के रूप में काम कर रहे हैं। आपने अभी रिसेंटली जो है मेडिकल ऑफिसर्स के लिए कोरोना गाइडलाइंस जो राजस्थान सरकार की तरफ से इश्यू था, उसके माध्यम उसको यूनिवर्सिटी के माध्यम से उसने टेकअप किया आपने सर। जनरल पब्लिक के लिए आपने कोरोना गाइडलाइंस बनाई है। केंद्र सरकार के जो कमेटी थी, कोर कमेटी थी, उसमें आप चेयरमैन थे, उसके तहत आपने चिल्ड्रन के लिए कोरोना गाइडलाइंस को बनाया है। आपने रिसर्च ओरिएंटेड एविडेंस बेस्ड ट्रीटमेंट प्रोटोकॉल, एक हमारे जो आयुर्वेद यूनिवर्सिटी का जो रिसर्च ओरिएंटेड जितना भी वर्क है उसको आपने एविडेंस बेस्ड ट्रीटमेंट प्रोटोकॉल के रूप में प्रकाशित किया। एक मॉन्यूमेंट्री है सर आपके टाइम में वर्क हुआ है। इसके अलावा आपने बच्चों के लिए इतना फेवर करते हैं, बच्चों के बारे में इतना सोचते हैं कि जो बच्चे निकल रहे हैं उनका स्किल का कैसे डेवलपमेंट हो सके, वो अपने लेवल पे कैसे खड़ा हो सके, इसके लिए आप स्टूडेंट स्किल डेवलपमेंट मॉड्यूल्स के रूप में आपने उनके लिए एक जो है एक बड़ा इनिशिएटिव लिया है जो आज बच्चों के लिए बहुत काम में आएगा। और स्किल डेवलपमेंट मॉड्यूल्स फॉर मेडिकल ऑफिसर्स के स्किल डेवलपमेंट के लिए कुछ मॉड्यूल्स सर आप कर रहे हैं। स्टेट गवर्नमेंट की जो कमेटी है उसमें आप चेयरमैन हैं। आपका स्वर्ण प्राशन प्रोग्राम जो पूरे देश भर में चल रहा है सर, आप उसके पायनियर हैं। उसके आपने प्रोटोकॉल्स बनाए हैं, क्योंकि हर आदमी अपने अपने हिसाब से कुछ भी करता था, कुछ भी बनाता था। आपने उसके लिए स्वर्ण प्राशन प्रोटोकॉल बनाए हैं कि निर्धारित जो उसका मेथड कैसा होगा, उसको कैसे यूज करना है। उसके अलावा आप अबंडेंट, मैं काउंटलेस जितने भी ऐसे इनिशिएटिव्स आपने लिए हैं। यूनिवर्सिटी में आपने सेंटर फॉर ह्यूमन रिसोर्स डेवलपमेंट की स्थापना की। उसके अलावा आपने सेंटर फॉर इनोवेटिव रिसर्च और नेटवर्क, इसकी स्थापना की। आपने कई सारे नवाचार ऐसे काम कर रहे हैं। और अभी आप रिसेंटली आपकी और IIT के माध्यम जो MOU है उसके माध्यम से हम लोग IUTAP का जो प्रपोजल गया है उस पे सर आप लोगों का मार्गदर्शन रहा है। आप दोनों माननीय जो है हमारे सेलिब्रिटीज हैं जो हमारे, और मैं अभी हमारे DC साहब से आग्रह करूंगा कि वो हमें इस अवसर पर, इस कार्यक्रम की शुरुआत पर हमें उद्बोधन देने का श्रम करें। माननीय कुलपति महोदय।
थैंक यू प्रोफेसर राकेश जी। प्रोफेसर शांतनु चौधरी जी, डायरेक्टर IIT जोधपुर, प्रोफेसर मिताली मुखर्जी जी, today's eminent speaker, Professor Rakesh Sharma, in charge human resource development of the university, faculty members, student and audience. I think today is a very great day, as we know that a lot of things are linked with today's date, just like the Army Day and so many other things are there. So even in the history of this university, today may be a historical event, because today we are going to start a series by blending two wisdoms. I mean, the ancient wisdom of Ayurveda and the modern and the latest technology with the help of IIT. As we know that we are having a lot of things in Ayurveda which need to be proved, which are already in practice. But when we went with the thought that whether we will be able to show the evidences for the efficacy for means changing the ancient technology by integrating the latest one. So I will be very much thankful to Professor Shantanu Chaudhary ji, because he is the person who is having a very wide vision, and I think he is the person, first person in the country to initiate such type of activity in IIT Jodhpur. He established a center of excellence in the institute campus, and initiated so many things to establish the ancient concepts by integrating this modern technology. As we know that we are practicing, people use concept of Prakriti in so many ways. But we know that today's topic is concerned with the precision medicine. And when we say precision medicine, the synonym may be the personalized medicine. So concept is there, but just by integrating with this technology or genomics, I think we can prove and show the evidences to whole world. I think this word precision medicine is not very much old. As I remember, it was first defined in 2015. It is a very precise, and initially it was coined for managing or predicting for the patient of cancers in the field of oncology. But later on, with lot of evidences, the scope of precision medicine that expanded, and now it is used with the help of genomic sequencing to implement the concept of diagnosis, the very specific treatment which we are already perceiving through concept of Prakriti. So there are a lot of things, but ultimately everybody asks for the evidences. So with this initiative with the IIT, I think Professor Mitali, she is also pioneer in this field, and she is working for last 20 years, more than 20 years in the field of biogenomics. So now with this joint initiative, in future, we can show several evidences to this world, and even when we are practicing in Ayurveda, so it will be with more confidence, with more applications. So as you know that I will not speak much, because our learned speaker, she is going to tell a lot about this concept, and today we are blessed with the presence of Professor Shantanu Chaudhary ji, Director IIT. So I think we must also listen few visionary word from Professor Chaudhary. So with these words, I again say Happy Makar Sankranti, Happy New Year to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, sir. We have learned a lot since you have taken the charge here. We have learned so many things on your side, and we have done so many new innovations in our campus, and hope you will continuously guide us and make us do different things in future as well. Now I request Professor Shantanu Chaudhary ji to please bless us. I would like to mention a little bit of his bio sketch. He's a person of a broad caliber, and I would like to share a little bit of his bio sketch available with me. Professor Shantanu Chaudhary is the director of IIT Jodhpur and also a professor at the Department of Electrical Engineering, IIT Delhi. He holds a BTech, Electronics and Electrical Communication Engineering, and PhD, Computer Science and Engineering degrees from IIT Kharagpur. Professor Chaudhary joined the Department of Electrical Engineering, IIT Delhi in 1992 and was Dean, Undergraduate Studies at IIT Delhi. He also served as Director of CISR CIRI Pilani during 2016 to 18. He is a leading expert in the country on computer vision and artificial intelligence and has led and mentored in diverse areas the AI applications ranging from brain-computer interfaces, drones, digital health, and imaging diagnostics. He has extensively used AI, IoT, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, AR and VR technologies for transformational changes in the way we experience our heritage and culture, among which the Hampi Digital Heritage Project is noteworthy. Professor Chaudhary is the recipient of the Distinguished Alumnus Award from IIT Kharagpur. Professor Chaudhary is a fellow of Indian National Academy of Engineers INAE and National Academy of Sciences NAS. He is a fellow of International Association of Pattern Recognition IAPR. He was awarded the INSA Indian National Science Academy Medal for Young Scientists in 1993. He received ACCS CDAC Award for his research contributions in 2012. A keen researcher and a thorough academic professor, Chaudhary has over 300 publications in peer-reviewed journals and conference proceedings, 15 patents, and 4 authored edited books to his credit. He also is the leading. He also is the leading the Jodhpur City Knowledge and Innovation Cluster, a project under the aegis of Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor, Government of India. Sir, ये थोड़ा सा आपका परिचय है, आपका बहुत विशाल अनुभव है, बहुत विशाल जो है आपका करियर रहा है. सर, हम आपका स्वागत करते हैं अपने इस प्लेटफॉर्म पे. आपने हमें ब्लेस किया है. हम आपसे विनम्र निवेदन है कि आप हमें इस अवसर पर जो है ब्लेसिंग्स प्रदान करें. प्रोफेसर शांतनु चौधरी जी, सर.
थैंक यू प्रोफेसर राकेश कुमार, प्रोफेसर Abhimanyu Kumar and other dignitaries who are present here. I think it's a very significant occasion where a technology institute and an Ayurveda university is coming together for initiating a lecture series which will bring ancient science and the modern science and technology together. And it's a momentous occasion. I think it's for the country as well as for Rajasthan as well as for Jodhpur. And the opportunity that we have got to create Jodhpur City Knowledge and Innovation Cluster, in which we have actually gathered professionals and researchers from diverse disciplines to come together to address some basic fundamental problems of humanity as well as that of local region, is a unique opportunity for Jodhpur and Rajasthan. And this initiative is part of that opportunity for us. And I would like to thank and congratulate Professor Abhimanyu Kumar for taking up this initiative. In fact, what is very important that I would like to touch upon is that Ayurveda is possibly the most significant example of ancient Indian science. Now, the whole question is the objective scientific thought process and objective scientific investigation process which emerged post-Renaissance in the modern world is post-dating what had happened in the space of Ayurveda. Now, those methodologies today are significant for being used in the context of Ayurveda to make Ayurveda accepted globally and more popularly as a definite school of medicine and in a different context altogether. Now, it's also a responsibility for us to establish that whatever the ancient knowledge that we have inherited, we should establish and validate with respect to what we call these modern scientific evidence-based processes. Whether they are believed or not believed in each school of thought, this exercise also generates additional confidence and a possible insight into the methodologies which are part of the School of Ayurveda. And IIT Jodhpur and Ayurveda University include, as well as AIIMS and others together. In fact, we are trying to build up an ecosystem of what we call medical technology. And in that medical technology, it's extremely important for us to see how the technology principles really can be used in the context of Ayurveda, Ayurveda theories and Ayurveda practices. Because in terms of today's data analytics, AI applications, the entire practices data, the experiences, the coded experiences that we have in the space of Ayurveda, even the coded knowledge which is available in the space of Ayurveda can actually be put into a rigorous mathematical framework and can be used to establish and prove and provide a proper proof procedures for many of the actions which are followed in this science. In fact, Ayurtech initiative is actually to bring in these kind of objective processes and procedures so that Ayurveda is more aligned with the modern concept of science and technology. And in fact, this is the need of the day. And when we are basically celebrating 75 years of Indian freedom, it's also the question of establishing whatever has been our heritage in the lens of modern science and reimagine them in the context of modern science and engineering. And in fact, that's exactly the way we can really celebrate our heritage and ancient knowledge. And in fact, this lecture is exactly the ideal way to move in that direction. And our whole initiative in terms of Ayurtech, MedTech, looking into heritage is exactly the initiative to reimagine for our youth, for the next generation, okay, of the Indian culture, heritage, Indian knowledge. If we cannot make a synthesis of modern art, modern knowledge, modern science, and that of the heritage which is Indian, we cannot take the Indianness to the global platform in a big way. And that is exactly the issue we should address on the 75th year of Indian freedom. And this lecture series, these initiatives that we are taking together, I think movement in the correct direction. And so as part of that Amrit Mahotsav, this lecture, it is more apt, and nothing can be more apt than having this lecture. I think I would like to again congratulate Professor Abhimanyu Kumar and his colleagues to take this initiative on behalf of JCKIC and have this event organized. All the best for this event and the future of this whole activity which you would like to take up together. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your kind words. And hopefully, university and IIT both will move ahead in this direction, and we will certainly have something fruitful from our joint venture in the form of this Ayurtech. and under the JCKIC class, JCKIC establishment. Sir, thank you for your kind words, and I'm very much blessed that you both have blessed this program, and this program has gained a different type of momentum now. And now onwards, with your kind request, I would like to invite at the first lecture of this series, which is being delivered by by Professor Mitali Mukherjee ji. I would like to introduce Mitali Mukherjee ji with all of you. Mitali Mukherjee ji has recently joined IIT Jodhpur as a professor of Department of Bioscience and Bioengineering. She was formerly a chief scientist at the CSIR Institute of Genomics and Integrative Biology and was involved in setting up of genomics initiatives in the area of rare genetic disorders, population genomics, functional genomics of repetitive sequences, and genomics. She has a PhD in molecular genetics from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, 1997. Her research is in the broad area of understanding human genome structure and variation for its application in the discovery of biomarkers for predicting susceptibility to diseases, understanding human phenotypes and environmental adaptations, and mapping mutational histories. She had been the convener of Indian Genome Variation Consortium project, which provided the first comprehensive genetic landscape of the Indian populations. She has been involved in co-developing a new area of research, Genomics, which aims to integrate Ayurveda with modern medicine through genomics, and was the program director of CSIR's Genomics Unit Trisutra. The unit at present houses the Center of Excellence on Applied Developments in Ayurveda, Prakriti and Genomics, supported by the Ministry of Ayush. Her group has provided the first evidence for molecular correlates of Prakriti that lead to identification of a predictive biomarker for high altitude adaptation. At IIT Jodhpur, at present, she is the head of Department of Biosciences and Bioengineering and also a faculty at the School of Artificial Intelligence and Data Science. She is presently involved developing Center of Excellence in Integrative Precision Health, wherein the aim is to develop a data science-driven framework for population and individual risk stratification and early actionable precision health intervention. One of the sub-projects in this initiative is also IoTech that combines electronics, digital health, and artificial intelligence and multi-omics approaches for realizing evidence-based Ayurveda solutions in a transdisciplinary framework for implementation of integrative medicine in different clinical settings. The project would enable capacity building in IoTech and create entrepreneurship opportunities in the area of smart and affordable healthcare precision health solutions. It will also provide technology solutions for capture of millions of individuals' baseline data in time cost effective manner through digital phenotyping in Ayushman Bharat, Fit India mission projects. Tracking of health and disease management trajectories with non-invasive digitally enabled monitoring devices would reduce health burden and increase affordability. Mitali Mukherjee is also coordinating another novel initiative called the Desert Ecosystem Innovation Guided by Nature and Selection that aims to carry out an integrated study of the desert ecosystem to propel discoveries, inventions, and innovation for mitigating water, health challenges, and catalyzing growth of industry and agriculture for sustenance and livelihood. The project would be undertaken with a transdisciplinary approach involving stakeholders from medical, engineering, environmental, as well as life sciences, as well as NGOs and local community across Jodhpur City Knowledge Innovation Cluster, JCKIC institutions. Mitali Mukherjee has over 85 publications in international peer-reviewed journals. She has been recipient of number of national awards, the CSIR Young Scientist Award 2001, DBT, Department of Biotechnology, Young Women Scientist Award 2008, Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Award 2010, Vaswik Award 2016, and is a fellow of Indian Academy of Sciences and National Academy of Sciences. She is also the board member of International Consortium on Human Phenomics. She serves as a co-chair of the Department of Biotechnology BioCare program and is a member of DBT's Task Force on Genomics. SAC member of ICMR, National Institute for Research in Environmental Health, Bhopal and Institution of Occupational Health, Ahmedabad. Governing body member of NIT Durgapur, member of the Ayurvedic Biology Program Task Force of SERB, a member of Health Informatics Selection Committee MHD 17 of Bureau of Indian Standards, which is the National Mirror Committee of the ISO TC 215 that deals with informatics, as well as co-opted member of Ayush Informatics Subcommittee of the Health Informatics Selection Committee MHD 17 for assisting in developing ISO documents for standardization in the field of genomics, informatics, as well as Ayush Informatics. So, ma'am, this is not a whole, but it is a brief bio-sketch of your achievements, your life, your career. We are very much overwhelmed that you have accepted our invitation to deliver the lecture and to be a part of the lecture series ahead, which is related with this precision health based Ayurvedic evidences with the help of modern technology. And we are very much thankful once again. And we, with this, I request you to please kindly let us know about your vision in this regard. Thank you very much, Professor Mitali Mukherjee. Please initiate with your lecture. Thank you very much. We are not able to listen you, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
So good morning, everybody, and thank you, everybody, Dr. Rakesh and Professor Abhimanyu Kumar, for giving me an opportunity to give the first lecture on this interesting series which you have initiated. I think it's a unique thing which is happening in an Ayurveda setting, and I hope that we will be able to kind of increase the traction for this kind of area and get an interesting ecosystem built around Ayurtech and Ayurveda-based evidence-creating solutions. I also thank Professor Shantanu Chaudhary for having invited me to meaning to be a part of this kind of an initiative. It's really an interesting area I've got into, and the ecosystem which is provided in IIT is really a place where maybe these kinds of things will see the light of the day. So thank you so much, and I'll try to do justice to this opportunity which has been given to me, and hopefully I'll be able to convey what we want to achieve by this. So once again, thank you. Happy New Year, Happy Makar Sankranti, and I'll start the talk. So if I'll share my slides. So I hope my slides are visible. Right? Hello, can somebody just confirm my slides are visible, right?
Yes, your slides are visible.
Okay, thanks. So this is a brief outline of the talk, which I would like to kind of deliver today. The question is, if we want to go to Ayurtech for precision medicine, why we need a framework, and what is it I would mean by when we are talking about this framework. So the first thing is why Ayurveda and why integrative precision medicine. And if we venture into this, so what? Meaning, how does it benefit, and who are the people who will be the end beneficiary? So if we are able to address this, then the question is, then how do we go about integrating this? How do we evolve a unifying language? Because both are very contrasting systems in terms of the language, in terms of the principles, and how do we get the best out of it, and why then is there a need of IoTech. So this is the broader kind of a framework in which I have kind of planned the talk. So if we go to the why part, this is like a study conducted by WHO across many diseases throughout the world, and there's a huge data. And the one overriding thing which came out in all these studies is that even though the lifespan has increased in people, the health span is not so much. Health span has actually reduced by 10 years in most of the non-communicable diseases. And major and a fraction of large fraction of the people are now living towards the last 10 years of their life with increased disease burden. So the need of the hour is how we can actually evolve personalized and preventive approaches for reducing this burden. And if this is such a huge problem, how do we scale this approach? And the other thing is that there has been really a focus on wellness now, and this is considered to be growing at 5 to 10% every year. The the major market, meaning it was like projected at 4.2 trillion in 2017, and this number is still exploding. And recent McKinsey research has shown that consumers are now got interested in major health wellness categories like health, fitness, nutrition, appearance, sleep, and mindfulness. And there also is emphasis on how traditional and complementary medicine could be an enabler in this wellness space. And what is now being really emphasized is the future of the wellness is all going to be if we are connected and we are able to customize a person's health solution, then that's the next normal state of health. Uh, so why this is shifting, and so there has been really a paradigm shift from the way conventional medicine has been practiced to what now is being called as P4 medicine. P4 medicine stands for predictive, preventive, personalized, and participatory. Traditionally, in the modern medicine, all the drugs have been kind of come out through randomized control trial, and most of the drugs are based on population based averages. Whereas the other end of the spectrum is personalization, where you would like to have every person having a medicine which is most suitable. And this is also the why it is so is that the more and more randomized control trials and more observational studies, that these are all Cochrane trials, are revealing that even the drugs which are given based on average population, there is a large inter-individual variability in the effectiveness of those drugs. So there is a term which is evolved, which is called as NNT, that is number needed to treat. So typically, if you have these five for this medicine called Abilify or Ariprazole, out of all these five, only one shows blue, and this shows it would be qualified as NNT as 5. That is, you administer the medicine to 5 people, only one gets effectively treated. In heartburn, the NNT is even more. And then there's another term called NNH, which is number needed to harm. So now this has been evolved because it actually enables the doctors to take a decision as to what medicine they are giving, but it also clearly emphasizes how much is the inter-individual variability, and we need to move from this randomized controlled trials to one person trial. These trial designs are just getting evolved, but this is what is the move now from a population based approach. The second the second problem which is also becoming apparent is how you manage the disease. Typically, one disease is like now is clearly appreciated that it's like a moving target, because not everybody converges to the same kind of progression. the treatment regime might be similar, but the side effects might be different, and that depends on a large number of factors. So this is a busy slide, but the whole thing is now this kind of a maze is getting apparent in all the diseases, that a disease could progress by processes like inflammation, thrombosis, fibrosis, immune response, cell proliferation, or apoptosis. These processes could be impaired in different people, which could lead to heterogeneity in outcome. And on the top of that, there are effect of genetic and effect of lifestyle. So now it is appreciated that all the people who progression to the disease need to be mapped out in the context of all these things. Even a disease like sickle cell anemia, which is caused by one mutation, it's now known that mutation you can easily diagnose, but you are not able to kind of predict what kind of end outcome the person might have. Some land up in stroke, some might land up in hemolytic anemia, some might have bone infraction, and some might not have anything. So now this also has prompted people to say that not even Mendelian disorders are consequent with environment and modifiers, because of which people land up differently. So these have raised the questions of there is a need to identify what are the modifiers, are there endophenotypes, and do you require targeted interventions. I just have mentioned that if you people are listening, and since this is an Ayurveda audience, are you able to relate Shatkriya Kal and Samprapti in these kinds of observations which people are making? The other thing is that people thought that if they would sequence the genome, they will know the genetic basis of diseases, and that way they would be able to know what the different diseases, which kind of genes can contribute. But what is now happening with so many things is that it seems to be a maze, it seems to be a connectome of diseases, so that one disease could be consequent because of many genes, and those genes could also feed to other diseases. So as a result of which, a disease is a syndrome, and many often when you go to a doctor, modern doctor, they look at you from the perspective of the presentation, but then they also admit that there are other systems which are also affected, but integrative way of looking at a person if they have a disease is still not totally comprehensible. The another part is that the challenge is how you delineate what is the heritable component, what is the acquired component, and what is the interventional component. So everybody knows that some things runs in the family, diabetes runs in the family, but not everybody has the diabetes. And then the intervention needs are also not generic, everybody has a different need. And that is why understanding who I am, that's what I call innate, acquired, and modifiable, might be a route to how you precisely treat a person. The other thing is also that not only who you are, but how you behave in different environment, different temporal conditions are also getting now captured because of so many advancements in way we capture information. And people are thinking that if we are able to capture a large amount of such kind of diseases, would we be able to use data science based technologies to cluster this information and try to find out whether people respond differently to different conditions, and that way would you be able to evolve out of these understanding specific kind of marker pattern which will enable treatment of people in an individualized manner. So basically what you want to do is create a GIS map of an individual to be able to then predict what the response is likely to be. So this is where precision medicine thought is now, that if we are able to do all those things, then we might be able to have an intervention possibilities at all levels, from womb to tomb. That is from identifying defects to having an interventional possibility at the prenatal or just newborn, or preventing diseases, or kind of understanding what diseases you are at risk, or how you treat infectious diseases, or when people have cancer, how you treat them in a more precise manner. In the drug space, how you treat most effectively and how you can increase the health span of the people. Or if you would be able to know the cause of death, would you be able to have an understanding as to a precise understanding of a person at all dimensions. Now, more in the last 2 years, all of us have understood that how this kind of an inter-individual variability in the context of all these geotemporal things need to be really understood, and how limited understanding we have. All of us have been impacted at one time by one strain of virus, but for us, everybody, it's a different kind of a ticking bomb. We really do not know who is going to be hospitalized, who is going to have a asymptomatic kind of a presentation, who is going to have a long COVID. Not much is clear, and this is more than enough has revealed that how much focus we need to have in understanding inter-individual variability. So where are people looking for these to begin with? So one of the things is the four letters, which are commonly shared as a string of DNA or chromosome in across all kinds of systems. So that's why you are able to study the virus and study the human using the same kind of technology at the same pace during the COVID time, because every organism is made of these letters, except for, of course, COVID is made of RNA. So there are certain kinds of deviations from generic code of DNA. And each of these genomes, if we study, they have a story to tell. So I kind of just give a brief overview that you can think of DNA as the letters which are threaded into words, and those words make sentences which are called as genes. And a set of these genes, if they are threaded together, then they form the chromosome. And such kind of chromosomes, like for example the 23 pairs of chromosomes which we have, each set we get from one parent, it's called the genome, and this is what is the book of life. So understanding all these letters and trying to make the context in terms of genes or the sentences or the meaning is what is the science of genomics. And why that is important is because this DNA, or the DNA, is actually converted into a message, which is the mRNA, by a process of transcription. And this mRNA is what is converted into a string of amino acid, which is when threaded together is what is called as protein. So the DNA, which is the information, has to be read as a message to make a protein, which is the mostly the functional entity. Now you can well imagine that if there is one change in this DNA, then it could lead to an altered codon, which would lead to an altered amino acid and an altered protein. So this is where people wanted to study the genome, so that if you have differences, then you might be able to see all the differences presenting as differences in proteins, which could lead to the phenotypic differences in human. So the Human Genome Project was such kind of a project which went for 20 years, and it actually provided the first letters, but it also gave us a huge amount of information which we were not prepared for. So for example, way back in 2015, only 2,504 individuals, when they were analyzed, they found that there are so many variations in those letters amongst people, and this kind of gives so many combinatorial outcomes of the genome. And over and above that, it was also getting appreciated that human genome is not only human, but it has 10 times more bacteria, which are permanent residents of our body. And though the genes from the bacteria also contribute to 10 times more number of genes than the human genome. So human genome now becomes very complicated just by understanding what the genome sequence is. And because of these combinatorial possibilities, now there is no book of life, no reference book. There are many books of life. And after 10 years of the genome project, there was a major debate. Then after knowing all this, we still do not know what is a normal human genome and what do they look like. And so as a result of which we do not have a definition of health and healthy. Now, so there is a gap. There is a gap by which we are not able to stratify people. And the question is that can we have a method by which this heterogeneity in the population, would we be able to stratify people into groups so that if we take a drug, then we treat the most effective group and not harm the other groups in which the medicine is not going to be effective. So the question is, how you reduce the number needed to treat, increase the number needed to harm, so that you are harming less number of people, and at the same time have scales, right? So personalized might not work, a stratified approach might work. Now, in this context, whatever I told you might sound very, very familiar. And this is what has been also acknowledged way back in 2016 in a prominent Nature Outlook, where they talked about in India, Ayurvedic medicine was already known in Vedas because they were treating people on the basis of Prakriti or constitution. And in the definition of Charak in Sutrasthan, the aim has also been mentioned in the context of healthy and diseased, that is the personalized concept context is already evident 5,000 years back as a documentation. So we've been actually trying to probe this, and a couple of review articles we've written. Bhavna, she's been an MD in Ayurveda, and both of us have co-developed this area together. And there's been also debate in whether other traditional knowledge systems also follow this P4 system of medicine, and whether we would benefit by having this in our systems medicine. So the beautiful part about the Prakriti and why this is relevant in P4 medicine is because it actually has a way to assess a person in multi-system way. So you have to look at the anatomy, the physiology, the psychology, the physical attributes in a very holistic manner before you define a constitution of a person. And that constitution of a person is invariant, and it is contextualized by the age or by the time of the day the dosha gets perturbed. So these are very, very interesting concepts which resonates with what is talked about in the today's precision medicine time. And all these definitions which I said is a gap, that how do you understand health, how do you predict response based on the health state, and how you predict then a disease trajectory or how you manage the disease. These are all the open challenges of precision medicine, and these are ways which are kind of understood in Ayurveda. And that's because I'm not going to get into the details of this or in this audience, but that's because of this core understanding of Tridosha as a common organizing principle. So you understand health in terms of baselines, or health is always contextualized as perturbations from a person's baseline, so that if this much is for a Vat Prakriti, then this would be a disease state for a Pit Prakriti, because Pit has to have higher levels of Pit to begin with. So what you call as health, what you call as disease is contextualized by your baseline state. And this is what is assessed. The perturbation is therefore assessed, and you get people to their baseline state and not everybody to the same baseline state. And this is what is that translational concept of Tridosha into this Trisutra, where you look at the features, you look at the causes, and you look at the therapy, all through the same common organizing principle. And this is what modern people are talking about as network medicine, that if we can connect the cause and the features through to the drug in a molecular way, then we might be able to have a more precise way of treating people. These are the terms which I started with. I found that there are some vivid descriptions about what governs Vat, what governs Pit, and what is understood by Kapha. And there are processes which are known to be different, and these are all from Ayurveda descriptions. But this was very interesting to me because I came from a modern background. I did not have an orientation or any understanding of Ayurveda. I still do not have much in this audience. When I started to look at these terms like cell division, proliferation, signaling, movement, these are the things which kind of made sense. And this was the way we thought that could we actually connect through this common understanding, the three dosha principle, to the modern knowledge. And uh, and there were the other things which were appealing, that Ayurveda talked about Prakriti as a GIS of an individual, just like I mentioned, because there is a context of the parents, heritability from the parents of the, if the parents are of a Prakriti type, there would be some amount of contribution in the fetus, but then the mother's prenatal environment would also govern it. And after that, you would have a Prakriti of a person, which would be genetics and what we understand as epigenetics. And not only that, once you have that, then it would be also governed during temporal time, during seasonal variation, during aging of a person. So this is the really a GIS kind of a thing, right? And it also had vivid descriptions where in one shloka we have all the subjects which we deal in a modern context about jati, kul, desh, kal, by, all are as different areas of heritability, population genomics, geographical genomics, aging. So this was really interesting, that this is really a systems way of understanding person. And also what was very interesting is that we study that you have the same genetic makeup, but the expression of the genes are different in different tissues. So also the doshas are different in different tissues. So that could kind of give us a thought or a way to develop a working hypothesis, that is it because of which people have different kinds of differentiating features, because it is told that vat is more in these tissues, or pith is more in these tissues, or kaph is more in another set of tissues. So if a person is of a vat prakriti, then there would be more concentration of vat in these tissues, and which would actually maybe convert to different kinds of attributes. And that is where the measurements happen for prakriti, that you look at people's movement, physiology of bowel, bladder, body frame, auditory. So the abstractions of doshas can be visualized as phenotypes, and that is why it might become a very interesting way to kind of probe the prakriti and get to the cellular basis. So this was the thought, and this was the idea, that whether we could actually then think about using the today's measures of markers, environment, lifestyle, diet, all those definitions, if we can integrate it with prakriti and its concept, could we actually achieve the same kind of a goal which modern people are also looking at, Ayurveda people have also been practicing, but we would get a much better understanding towards a precision medicine. So this was the idea about starting this study so many years back. This is now nearly 2 decades. And I'll just I normally do it in a more interactive manner. But if I give these letters to all of you and I ask you, how do you relate it? And what is the common thing? So many of the people I know would first of all look at and say it is A. And the other people will say that it looks like color. But most of the people will not be able to guess what these are. But these are all the definitions of color. So if you go to web and you say absolute zero as a color, you might get this. If you say acid, then you get this. But then if you tell that draw a absolute zero with this color, you might not be able to do it. You need another thing. But I could draw this. And why? What did I need to draw a different pattern with absolute zero? So this is a new thing I could make out. And this is because I could actually get the RGB code of this color. And once I have the code, I can draw any pattern, right? So when I talk about Ayurgenomics, because there is often a mistake that anything you take from Ayurveda, you probe it with a modern thing, and then it becomes a Ayurgenomics. That is not that. The idea is that if we are able to get a interface which is a molecular language, then if I look at it in the modern setting, or if I look at it in the Ayurveda setting, it might make sense to me. For us, Ayurveda is like this. We do not know how does it connect to modern description, but if we are able to get an interface by which whenever we connect, it would connect to this and it would connect to this, then that is what is a platform which I'm talking about as an iogenomics platform. So this is what we wanted to achieve. And since I mentioned that DNA is a universal language, we thought that if we get the concepts into a universal platform of DNA, would that actually connect it? And this is where we started, that supposing Pitta talks about metabolism, Kapha talks about storage, Vata talks about signaling. If I take people who are at the end of the spectrum, would I actually, if I measure these axes by modern objective methods, would I be able to see differences in these axes amongst the people who classify differently? And that is what we went about asking. So this was a big initiative where
इसका
we
account होगा ना यहाँ?
classified people on the basis of prakriti. But one thing we had to also take care that we are actually taking them from the same ethnic, genetic, age group, all of that. Once we are harmonizing, because otherwise people might say that if I took people from different ethnic groups, they are different, and we are saying prakriti is different. So this was a major initiative which we undertook in an Indo-Russian context. So we also went to Russia to classify people, and the idea was, if we are taking RNA or blood out of them and looking at them at the expression level, at the genetic level, or at the biochemical level, do we see differences? And if we synthesize the information, does that resonate with what is described in Ayurveda, the risk and etc.? So this is what we did. This was a genetic map which we made in a different project, but based on that we collected samples of one genetic background and classified them on the basis of prakriti, took the predominant group and tried to see their differences. And this is just a summary. It took us a lot of years to get to that. But what we found was something very interesting, that if we take a routine biochemical test, we have a range. But if we divided the same group of people into Vat, Pitta, and Kapha, we found that Vat, Pitta, and Kapha for a particular kind of a parameter, let us say hematocrit, lipid profile, are having a restrictive range within the overall range. That means for Vat people, this is the normal, and if they move to here, that's actually a disease state, which might not be so for the Pitta people. But we wait for all of them to come here to say that this is disease, but then this person might have actually progressed latently to a disease, and this person might progress to disease faster. So this is what we observed. This was our first study where we could actually find that there were differences amongst people with respect to routine biochemical parameters which we are using in everyday diagnostics, and also with respect to processes like cell cycle, immune response, many other processes. They differed between prakriti types. So this was the first time we could also so when I'm talking about iogenomics and whether it makes sense that cell cycle more in Vat, whether it makes sense to Ayurveda people, it definitely has a description where you talk about Parmanu Bhedna Parisankhya is the Vayu work, right? So these were very interesting things, because we also in our supplementary would give these shlokas, because people would not believe that we are actually able to connect the two sciences. Very recently, we actually showed that if we take cell lines of people who are derived from Vat, Pitta, and Kapha, we find that the doubling time differs between Vat and Kapha. That is, Vat actually divides faster than Kapha, which is what we found in peripheral blood. We also find at the cellular level. And what we could actually show is that Vata are more susceptible to UV, as a result of which there is a protective phenotype of cell proliferation, so that they might not die even if there is a DNA damaging agent. So having a higher levels of cell proliferation is actually a hardwired thing in Vata, because there is a need for Vata for that. So this is what we actually showed in a paper, and it was very heartening to see that such a thing becomes relevant in a disease scenario also. So there's a study from NIMHANS which shows that bipolar disorder patients are treated with lithium, and the response to lithium actually is determined by these differences in cell proliferation rate, such that if Kapha people like cell proliferation rate are more in those people who are not responsive to lithium. So this is the place where we start to think that maybe this is translatable, that if you do Prakriti phenotyping in clinical setting, even in modern settings, there may be a better outcome of the same treatment regime. So there has been other kinds of discoveries. For example, we could show that adaptation to hypoxia differs between Kapha and Pitta Prakriti, and Pitta Prakriti have such a kind of an adaptation. Pitta Prakriti from sea level has such a kind of an adaptation which are already adapted conditions in high altitude. So what is adapted for high altitude is actually a signature in Pitta Prakriti, such that if these people maybe go to high altitude, they might have a better outcome than Kapha individual, because they have signatures which suggest that their adaptability to hypoxic condition will not be so great. And this we tested out, and we saw that the same kind of a genetic makeup was more in people who go to high altitude and suffer from this disease called high altitude pulmonary edema. So this showed us that even before people getting to high altitude, if we are doing Prakriti in them, maybe we might be able to assess who are the people who might be doing better at high altitude. So this was again the Ayurgenomics framework that we went to Sanskrit description, and we actually found that in high altitude Kapha Vata prevalence is much more. So it might be obvious that if you have a pith elevated, then it might be more protective. So these are the kind of things which we discovered, and this was the first time we could actually show that there is a gene which could be linked to high altitude adaptation, which was discovered on the basis of such kind of a methodology. So now moving ahead, from the feature space, we could find hypoxia is a area or a axis which differentiates Kapha and Kapha from Pitta. And a colleague of ours, Dr. Anurag Agarwal, he used this lead. He was also an author in this paper, and he's a modern doctor, to show that in a mouse model, if he modulates the hypoxia around this axis, the inflammatory consequences happen in asthma, and more inflammation and more injuries there. We also showed that if there is more hypoxia, then Prakriti people tend to have a bleeding related genotype more in them to be able to prevent stroke outcome. So this was, then we started to connect hemostasis axis to hypoxia axis. So bleeding as a phenotype of Pitta Prakriti is known, and here we showed that bleeding is actually a need because they are more pro-hypoxic. So if you are more pro-hypoxic, then their tendency to bleed is much more a protective phenotype. Otherwise, you might have a thrombotic outcome. Now, this kind of a thing, now where you have a mouse model where you modulate EGLN1 and you can increase or decrease asthma, that became a model for Bhavna to use a drug which is used in when there are pith cuff perturbation in asthma. Whatever drug you take, could you actually test it whether it intersects with the hypoxia axis? And this is what was done. So Adathoda Vasika, we could show in the same model, it rescues hypoxia dependent severe asthma and mitochondrial dysfunction. So you can see now from the hypoxia axis, we've been able to get to Trisutra framework where Ling, Hetu, and Aushad are seamlessly connected. Now it becomes interesting that wherever hypoxia is relevant, Adathoda might be important, and that is where Bhavna actually studied in more severe models, and she could show that Adathoda Vasika attenuates inflammatory and hypoxia responses, and they might be useful in COVID conditions. So this is where a clinical trial is actually ongoing. So as you can see how it becomes relevant in COVID, that people have responded differently to hypoxia. There are hemostatic outcome differences amongst Prakriti. So such a kind of a thing in a clinical setting of COVID might also be enable us to predict who are the people who might have much unfavorable consequences of hypoxia or inflammation if they were to get COVID, and this is testable. The second one I'll just rush through is because this is interesting that Ayurveda actually uses repurposing as an everyday thing, because you would see modern conditions and you have to contextualize to Ayurveda descriptions to evolve a better drug. So whosoever is able to understand Ayurveda well and modern outcome well are the people who might be able to practice Ayurveda well. So even Ayurveda people might need assistance in terms of if you want to be sure of whatever recommendation is giving makes sense for modern description. So that's why I used the same axis and said, kind of probed whether a therapy can lead us to molecular causes and feature through the same kind of a way. So I used a drug, Sesam plus Pereira, which is used for very, very contrasting conditions of hormone, little disorder, and even kind of fever. And maybe in during COVID time, this might also be recommended because it's also used for treating dengue. So the question was whether we could test it, that such a kind of a drug which is used for very contrasting condition, does it work through the same common axis, or different molecules of this go to different axis, right? So there are platforms available where one can query a multi herbal formulation through this platform where millions of such compounds signatures exist. So for example, if you treat a unknown drug to this platform and get a signature, you would be able to map it with other signatures which are available for other drugs, and based on those signatures you could sort of predict what kind of class your drug belongs to and do functional studies. So I use this, my group use this kind of platform, and we use Sesam plus Pereira to probe what kind of pathways it goes through. And this is a paper which we recently published, because through this we were able to show that there are drugs which are used for dengue, which are protein synthesis inhibitors. Those are the ones to which these signatures match, and it also modulates the estrogen axis. And we could actually show in a dengue model, in a dengue system, that if you use Sesam plus Pereira, we can reduce the dengue titer, but if we modulate estrogen, then that activity is not so much. So here we could actually use the wisdom or the knowledge base of Ayurveda to identify such axes which are relevant. And very recently, we also then could integrate the COVID information and kind of predicted that this could also be relevant in COVID, modulating COVID. And then we tested it out in COVID infected cell line, and we could actually show that if we take the full drug, it can bring about inhibition of SARS-CoV-2 by 98%. And if we take individual compounds also, they also show inhibition. So this is a way by which a repurposing candidate can actually be enabled to be through these technology platforms could be enabled to provide solutions. So there are therefore opportunities by such kind of an integrative method. We look at humans, we look at models, we look at platforms, and we could be able to not only provide an understanding from Ayurveda perspective, but it could also lead to new knowledge. So this is where I
Oh.
that unmet needs, which could be kind of enabled by such kind of an approach, and this could lead to new drugs and more options for patients. And Ayurgenomics therefore becomes a framework. But then why Ayurtech? So that's where I will just kind of wind up, because there are many people who will give subsequent lectures, but just a flavor for what we want to do in Ayurtech is that my move to IIT has been because there is a huge amount of people who are in multidisciplinary space, and this we in IIT have these schools and platforms which enables smart healthcare solutions and also big data sciences solution, and we have a pool of students and also the enabling mechanisms for tie up with various members of Jodhpur clusters, so that we thought that if we are able to develop a transdisciplinary center of excellence in integrative precision health, then we might be very, very competitive. And IoTech is one such an initiative which we are proposing under this auspice. And here, like we mentioned, that we want to actually develop a AI-driven integrative framework for population and individual stratification so that we can enable early intervention. So it would be in various kind of spaces, and one of the major focus would also be in focus on arid region. The hypoxia study showed that geography integration also could be very interesting from Ayurveda perspective. And so in Ayurtech, we actually aim to leverage Ayurveda to fill the gaps in precision health cohorts using the systems understanding, the individualized baseline understanding, the disease trajectory, the unique therapeutic modalities, and also the contextualization in population, culture, and habitat. So this might be the first initiative of its kind, where we would be combining electronic, digital health, and AI for such kind of solutions. And here we would be developing the framework in all these spaces: Prakriti, Vikriti, drug, application, and then globalization through the Ayurtech in immersion for diagnostic solution, for therapeutic solution, for analytics, in validation, and even for capacity building. So there are objectives laid down or goals laid down, and these will all be dealt with my colleagues subsequently. They are computer people who talk, who we will be using computer vision, IoTs, and all for large scale screening of Prakriti. We'll be using big data analytics and ontologies for connecting Ayurveda and modern descriptions through machine learning, natural language processing. We will be providing engineering based solutions and drug standardization and control solutions for through engineering. And then how we translate it into integrative medicine setting, how we develop compendium of drug disease network for repurposing newer understanding newer candidates or drug molecules, etc. And also a major focus is how we build an ecosystem so that we actually have next generation manpower who have a combination of understanding of Ayurveda, modern medicine, and engineering for such solution. So it has a huge team from Professor Chaudhary's vision and direction in the area of computer vision, AI, ML, to us kind of mentoring younger faculties who are very charged in various areas of bioscience, computer science, electrical engineering, chemistry. We have people who are stakeholders from industry and guiding us also and working with us. And then the Ayurveda University, we've already formed a very kind of an active group. They have participated very, very actively, and also the Ayush Center in Jodhpur. And I think many, many people are wanting to get associated with us. So I end now. Thank you so much. I think I might have overshot my time, but thank you. So. Hello. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes.
So, any questions? I'm happy to.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Okay.
We have been engaged in your knowledge propagation for since last 1 hour. So hope everybody was engaged with the way you have been sharing your esteemed experience and your knowledge with all of us. I hope all of us would have been very much benefited with all your presentation. I would like to request if anybody of us is having any query, please mute yourself. Please, if anybody is having any query, he is welcome to ask questions.
There is some background noise coming from somewhere.
Background noise. Where from background noise is coming? Please mute your mics. Any questions from any side?
Can I have one question?
Sure. Please name yourself. Then.
So I'm Ajay Agrawal.
Hello.
Yeah. So very nice talk, Mitali, and since we have been discussing on this project for a long time and many things. So one question comes to me, see, when we talk of personalized medicine, same virus or bacteria or source of infection can do some different things in a person.
Yes.
So what's the importance of diagnosis of that disease since it is going to affect in a different way in different person?
So, the diagnosis is there that you have the disease, but the route to the disease you have to stratify. So, some people might actually have a inflammatory related problem. Some might actually have a cell cycle related problem. So, if you are able to identify markers in a person, uh, which differentiate what whether the constitution of the person has actually led to the disease outcome of a person. For example, if cell proliferation is inherently higher in Vata Prakriti, and in some disease condition, for example, in cancer, cell proliferation is also a signature for cells having lost their ability to stop division, right? But now, for somebody that is actually a normal state, and for somebody it is a disease state. If you really do not know whether it's Prakriti or Vikriti, you might actually be treating both the things similar manner, and as a result of which you might actually be harming one person and might be effectively treating another set of person, but it will be a heterogeneous treatment. So that is why it is becomes very important to find endophenotypes in disease and compare it with background native state of the person to be able to arrive at that. So that's what Prakriti allows. Prakriti tells that there are people who are prone to inflammation. There are people who might be prone more to bleeding consequences. Now, if you want to treat a person for a bleeding related disorder, how much to treat a Pith Prakriti and how much to treat a Vata Prakriti? So, Dr. Rakesh might be able to. Can you, Dr. Rakesh, can you mute the person because you are holding the, because there are some people who
Just a
have
minute, just a minute. Ratnesh.
You could as a, you could as a mute your people from where. Can you, you can see the person from where the noise.
Please mute the mic.
Please mute yourself. Who is having unmuted his mic? Please mute yourself. Yes.
I think as a, yeah. So maybe Ayurveda people can talk a little bit more about this aspect. But Ajay, I do not know whether I answered your question.
No, fine. Some insight, and I think we'll discuss more later on.
Yes.
But so I was just wondering, see, if we are doing a diagnosis, so we look
Yes.
for the source. But how
Yes.
it works on different individuals differently. So I
Yeah.
think that will be a better way to treat that person.
Yes.
Only just from the diagnosis point of view, it may not be
It will not be. So that's what
the
we are
root cause may
ending.
not be the best.
Yes. Outcome, all the outcomes are in terms of measuring the biochemical parameters. But if those inherent ranges are different between people, then you first need to calibrate it with whatever the inherent range is. So sometimes you can do it by a normal tissue and a diseased tissue. You can know the inherent one from the normal tissue of the person, and then you can look at the disease and then factor it. So that's what we have to arrive at. What is Prakriti marker? What is Vikriti marker? Contextualized by Prakriti. And then contextualized by the stage of the disease, like the Shatkriya Kal kind of concepts. So, but Ayurveda audience would be able to tell much better. Maybe Dr. Rakesh can elaborate. Thank you.
As this is the first lecture, and I think we have been planning with Professor Mithali Mukherjee ji that we are heading towards in a project regarding Prakriti, Ayurgenomics, and assertion, and another one, and IT, IoTech actually. And all these three projects we are working upon together, and many more discussions will be taken up. And this series is actually, as we have discussed with Mithali Mukherjee, that we wanted to share our views in this regard, that how we can move ahead, and we can discuss with each other in this regard, and share the best of the knowledge everyone having with them, and so that we can move ahead in a better way to explore the evidences, Ayurveda solutions, technology-based Ayurveda solutions in precision health. And I think in the next lectures ahead, we would be having the queries. If we can do one thing also, if we are having some queries, we can take up these queries in our next lectures as well, and we can have better options, better studied options, better updated options of the solutions of all our queries whenever the next lecture will be scheduled. And this way we will move ahead. I have discussed this one.
Professor Sharma,
yes sir.
I want to ask one question.
Professor Kian Singh sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, please. Professor Kian Singh sir is ex-head Department of Anatomy, IMS Faculty of Medical Sciences, BHU. Professor Kian Singh sir, please, you are welcome, sir.
Good morning, madam. Your lecture is very informative, and it will give much interpretative for the both of the streams. We have done one small study. Basically, we have done on the chromosomes disorders. So we will find that in one endometriosis type of the study, we will find that in Vatik Prakriti, more disorders in the chromosomes. And if we see the classification of the disease according to the Vat, Pitta and Kaph, the 80 type of the disease of in Vatik, 40 in the Pitic and 20 in the Kaphas. So you have says that cell proliferation is the more in the Vatik Prakriti. So this may be one of the cause for the producing of the disease in Vatik Prakriti persons, more cell proliferation concept, and this phenomena may be the more prone for the Vatik Prakriti persons.
We have used predominant Prakriti to understand the molecular correlate of dosha. So Vat could be in Vat Prakriti, Vat could be in Vat Pit, Vat Kaph, or Vat could be a perturbation, Vikriti also, right? So now the axis of Vat will be evident in cell proliferation. So it might describe Vat Prakriti, but it might also describe elevated levels of that as an elevated Vikriti also. So it's like we've used Prakriti, predominant Prakriti, as a way to identify molecular components of dosha. But since dosha is a common organizing principle, it could also be one of the major contributors to whatever phenomena you are saying, but there could be also metabolic link to maybe chromosomal aberration, some metabolic pathway. So what we have to be very careful about is that uh, Vata as an endophenotype in a disease, but Vata totally explaining a disease might not be so possible, because a disease could be an outcome by Vata, Pitta and Kapha, right? So it allows you to apportion as to which group of them could be because of Vata, and because there are phenotypes of Vata described in Ayurveda, maybe those phenotypes could actually lead you to those group of people in which maybe the chromosomal rearrangements could be because of Vata. So I would not say that it gives an entire explanation, but it actually shows that wherever Vata is more, cell proliferation seems to be one of the signatures which come up.
Okay, it means it gives some indications towards that.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Anybody else who is having any type of query in today's lecture, you can ask for this query. Anybody else? I think it's all for today, I think. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
So, I would like to request Dr. Harish Singhal. He is my co-coordinator in this program, and I'd like to request him to please thanks our audience present in this program. Please, Dr. Harish Singhal.
Namaskar to all. Akhil Mandalakaram Vyaptamin Characharam Tatpadam Tashitam Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Today is our honorable VC sir, Professor Abhimanyu Kumar, who give us an opportunity to enlighten the knowledge on Ayurveda. In collaboration of IIT, I am thankful to honorable VC sir to give the opportunity to enlighten our knowledge by the pioneer in biosciences with the Professor Mitali Mukherjee, who having more than 30 years experience in this field. I am also thankful to Professor Shantanu Chaudhary sir, Honorable Director IIT Jodhpur, bless us on this occasion and enlighten our knowledge. I also express my gratitude to Professor Mitali Mukherjee, head of the Department of Biosciences and Bioengineering, and who having the knowledge and enlighten our knowledge on through her first lecture on Ayurtech for Precision Medicines in Introduction to Basic Framework. I express my gratitude to our Instagram, Dr. Sima Kavyaji, and Professor Mahendra Sharma ji, Professor Govind Shai Shukla sir, Principal UCA, Dr. Rakesh Kumar Sharma sir, who always do all the things through the CHRD, Department of CHRD, and gives always new things to all the listeners and to attend programs like this. I also express my thanks to Professor Chandan Singh ji, Dr. Rajesh Gupta ji, Professor Rajesh Sharma ji, Dr. Prem Prakash Vyas ji, Professor Govind Gupta ji, Dr. Vijaypal Tyagi ji, Dr. Manoj Lakha ji, Dr. Dinesh Sharma ji, Dr. Rajaram Agrawal ji, Dr. Shivaram Sharma ji, Dr. Gyan Prakash Sharma ji, Dr. Rajesh Kumawat ji, Professor A. Nirma ji, and Dr. Ratnesh Kumar ji, Dr. Rita Mahava ji from Bhopal, Dr. Sunil ji from NIA, Dr. Sudip Bhattacharya ji from IIT, Professor Ajay Agrawal ji from IIT, Dr. Nidhi Srivastava ji from Jabalpur, Dr. Rajiv Soni, Dr. Vikrant Tripathi, Dr. Manali Tyagi ji, Dr. Pradeep Chauhan from Indore, Professor Sanjay Pandit ji, retired professor, Bharati Vidyapeeth Pune, Professor Vijay Lakshmi ji Gautam, head of the department Rachana Sharir, BHU, Dr. Gaurav Solanki ji from Shillong, and Professor K.N. Singh sir, ex-head of the department, ex-HOD, Department of Rachana Sharir, BHU, and Dr. Prahlad Raghuji from Jaipur. I also express all the my thanks to all the students of our institute as well as of IIT who enjoyed this knowledgeable lecture and get benefited. I expect this type of lecture will occur in future also. So I thankful to all to give their presence in these lectures. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I hope we have been in a very good time today, and we have learned a lot. And hopefully, in the next lecture, whenever it is scheduled, we will let each and everybody know about it, and we will be having, and hopefully, we will be sharing that the topic of that lecture, so that we may be well prepared regarding the subject and can prepare the queries accordingly and be prepared to respond them as well. So I personally thank each and everybody, and personally Mr. Hari Singhal sir, that he has taken a lot of pain, and he is the in charge IT here as well, and he has taken all the pain in this regard, and each and everybody whose name we could not name, and all the faculty. It is a very good initiative that we are having the faculty from across India, which is present here. It's a very good moral posting support for all of us. And thank you for each and everybody who is present from IIT, from university, and from all the institutions across India. Thank you once again, one and all. Thank you very much, especially Professor Mitali Mukherjee ji. You have again spared a lot of time from your busiest of schedule, and hopefully we will be preparing the next lecture with you very soon. Thank you, and with this I need your permission to call off this session now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Recording.